Three hunters vanished on a frozen lake, leaving behind only their abandoned equipment. But when investigators arrived to search the area, what they discovered under the ice still baffles detectives to this day. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you're watching, because now I'm going to tell you how all this happened. I'm telling you, Bobby, this is the year I bagged that 12-point buck, Jeffrey Collins said, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air as he arranged fishing lures in the display case. Robert Bobby Daniels shook his head and smiled. You say that every January, Jeff. Well, this time I mean it, Jeffrey replied, his blue eyes twinkling with excitement. It was Tuesday morning at Daniels' hardware store in downtown Lakeside Falls, Minnesota. Outside, snow blanketed the small town of 5,000 people. Inside, warmth spread from the old heater that had been keeping customers comfortable for 3 generations. Bobby checked his watch. Michael should be here soon. He's bringing those maps he's been working on. As if on cue, the bell above the door jingled. Michael Wright entered, carefully removing his glasses that had fogged up in the temperature change. He carried a thick folder under his arm. Sorry I'm late, Michael said. My students had questions after class about their science projects. Bobby clapped his youngest friend on the shoulder. No problem. Sarah packed extra sandwiches for our planning lunch. The 3 men gathered around the small table in the back of the store. For 15 years they had been taking an annual hunting trip on frozen Crystal Lake. Bobby unfolded a large map while Michael opened his folder. I've tracked deer movements all fall, Michael explained, pointing to his carefully drawn notes. They're moving further north than last year because of the wet summer. Jeffrey leaned back in his chair. Or we could try my spot. I found an amazing location last month when I was researching that article for Outdoor Life. Bobby rubbed his beard thoughtfully. Let's look at both options. The bell jingled again as Sheriff Tom Peterson walked in, stomping snow from his boots. Planning the big hunt? He asked, approaching their table. Bobby nodded. January 12th. You should join us sometime, Tom. The sheriff laughed. Maybe when I retire. Too busy keeping you troublemakers in line. Speaking of trouble, Jeffrey said, did Bobby tell you about the time we— Don't you dare, Bobby interrupted, but he was smiling. After the sheriff left, the men continued planning. Michael hummed classical music as he made notes, a habit he wasn't aware of until Jeffrey poked him. Mozart again, Jeffrey teased. Michael blushed. Was I doing it again? Sorry. At noon, Sarah Daniels arrived with their 13-year-old daughter Emma and 10-year-old son Jack. They carried lunch bags and a large thermos. Venison sandwiches, Sarah announced, giving Bobby a quick kiss. And coffee for your trip. Jack tugged on Jeffrey's sleeve. Will you bring me an arrowhead this time? You promised. Sure thing, buddy, Jeffrey replied, ruffling the boy's hair. I always keep my promises. Emma rolled her eyes. No, you don't. You said you'd teach me to fish last summer. That's different, Jeffrey protested. It rained that weekend. Everyone laughed, even Emma. Later that afternoon, Michael excused himself. I need to visit my mother before dinner. Bobby nodded. Michael never missed his twice-weekly visits to his mother Clara at Pinewood Assisted Living, even as her Alzheimer's made it harder for her to recognize him. After Michael left, Bobby closed the store early. He walked home through the quiet streets of Lakeside Falls, nodding to neighbors shoveling driveways. The town council meeting was tonight, and as a member, he needed to review the agenda. At home, Sarah was helping Jack with homework, while Emma practiced piano. Did you boys finalize your plans? Sarah asked. Bobby nodded, turning his wedding ring absently. Same spot as last year, but we might explore that North Shore Michael's been talking about. Just be careful, Sarah said. The weather can change so quickly in January. We always are, Bobby replied, kissing her forehead. 15 years of trips, and not a single problem. That evening, as Bobby prepared for the council meeting, Jeffrey sat at his computer, typing his latest outdoor adventure article. Michael graded science papers after returning from visiting his mother. All 3 friends looked forward to their upcoming trip, unaware that this year would be different. None of them could have imagined what waited beneath the ice of Crystal Lake, or that their 16th annual hunting trip would change Lakeside Falls forever. Dawn broke over Lakeside Falls on January 12, 2018, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold. Bobby Daniels stood in his driveway, loading the last of their gear into his red Ford pickup truck. "Did you check the weather forecast again?" Sarah asked, handing him the thermos of hot coffee. "Clear skies all day, temperature around 20 degrees. Perfect hunting conditions," Bobby replied, tapping his wedding ring against his teeth 4 times, a nervous habit he'd never been able to break. Sarah smiled and handed him a paper bag. "Your sandwiches, and I packed extra hand warmers." Emma and Jack ran out in their pajamas despite the cold, giving their father quick hugs before retreating back to the warmth of the house. Bobby climbed into the driver's seat just as Jeffrey's car pulled up. "Ready for the big day?" Jeffrey called out, grabbing his backpack and rifle case. "Been ready since last January," Bobby replied with a grin. Michael arrived minutes later, carrying his carefully organized equipment bag and a notebook filled with wildlife observations. "The barometric pressure is optimal for deer movement today," Michael said as he climbed into the back seat. Jeffrey laughed. "Only you would check barometric pressure before a hunting trip." The drive to Crystal Lake took 20 minutes, their conversation filled with plans and predictions. Bobby parked at the southern access point, where a small clearing met the frozen lake. "Remember how my dad used to say, 'Respect nature but never trust it'?" Bobby said as they unloaded their gear. Jeffrey nodded. 30 years of hunting advice boiled down to 7 words. They put on their bright orange safety vests over camouflage jackets and checked their hunting licenses and rifles. Bobby turned his father's old red cap 3 times before placing it on his head. Another tradition he never skipped. "I'll take the first step," Bobby said, as he always did. The ice was solid beneath their boots as they ventured out. 300 yards from shore, they set up their small base camp. Michael arranged their backpacks in a triangle while Jeffrey propped their rifles together in the center. "Let's try that spot you mentioned," Bobby said to Jeffrey. "The one from your article." Jeffrey's face lit up. "Really? I thought you'd stick to tradition." "Sometimes even I can be spontaneous," Bobby replied. The morning passed uneventfully. Around noon, they returned to their base camp for Sarah's venison sandwiches and coffee from the thermos. "This is strange," Michael said suddenly, staring at his compass. "The needle isn't settling." Jeffrey peered over his shoulder. "Probably just a malfunction." "Maybe," Michael said, but he sounded uncertain. As Bobby poured coffee into 3 cups, a low vibration passed through the ice beneath them, so subtle they almost missed it. "Did you feel that?" Bobby asked. Before anyone could answer, a second vibration came, stronger this time. "What the—" Jeffrey began. A bright light flashed beneath the ice, illuminating the water below them with an unnatural blue glow. "We need to get off the lake," Bobby said firmly, reaching for his rifle. Michael stepped toward the light. "Wait, look at the patterns." Below the ice, geometric shapes were forming in the light, shifting and changing like nothing they'd ever seen. "This isn't normal," Jeffrey whispered. The vibrations intensified. The men stood frozen, mesmerized by the pulsing light below. "Bobby?" Michael's voice sounded distant despite standing just feet away. The light flared suddenly, blindingly bright. When it faded seconds later, the ice was empty except for 3 backpacks arranged in a triangle, 3 rifles propped together, and 3 cups of coffee, still steaming in the cold air. That evening, Sarah Daniels paced her living room, phone pressed to her ear. "Tom, they should have been home hours ago," she said to Sheriff Peterson. "When did you last hear from them?" the sheriff asked. Bobby texted around 1 o'clock, said they were having lunch. "I'll head out there myself," Sheriff Peterson promised. They probably just lost track of time. But as his patrol car approached Crystal Lake under the rising moon, the sheriff knew something was wrong. Bobby's red truck sat alone in the parking area, keys still in the ignition. Using his flashlight, Sheriff Peterson followed footprints onto the ice. Approximately 300 yards out, he stopped, confused by what he found. 3 backpacks arranged in a triangle, 3 rifles propped together, untouched and loaded. A thermos of coffee, still warm, with 3 cups poured but undrunk. and no sign of Bobby, Jeffrey, or Michael anywhere. The sheriff radioed for backup. "I need search teams at Crystal Lake immediately," he said, his voice tight with worry. "We have 3 missing hunters." "We have 3 missing hunters," Sheriff Peterson's voice echoed across the police radio. By morning, the entire town of Lakeside Falls knew something was terribly wrong. The sun rose on a busy scene at Crystal Lake. Police cars, ambulances, and volunteer vehicles filled the parking area where Bobby's truck still sat untouched. Sarah Daniels stood wrapped in a thick coat, her children beside her. Jeffrey's ex-wife Amy held their son Tyler close, while a social worker sat with Michael's mother Clara, explaining the situation as simply as possible to the confused elderly woman. "We've searched the shoreline all night," Deputy Wilson reported to Sheriff Peterson. "No footprints leading away from their spot on the ice." Sheriff Peterson nodded grimly. "It's time to check under the surface. Call the dive team." Marcus Henderson, leader of the Lakeside Falls rescue team, arrived with 3 divers and equipment. They began cutting inspection holes in the ice around where the men had vanished. "Be careful down there," Sheriff Peterson warned. "If they fell through somehow, there could be weak spots we can't see." Sarah approached the sheriff, her face pale but determined. "They wouldn't just fall through. Bobby checked the ice thickness yesterday. It's over 12 inches solid." "I know," the sheriff said gently. "We'll figure this out, Sarah." At 9:37 in the morning, Marcus Henderson's voice crackled over the radio from his position below the ice. "Sheriff, you need to see this. Now." When the sheriff reached the inspection hole, Marcus was treading water, his face mask pushed up, expression stunned. "What did you find?" Sheriff Peterson asked, dreading the answer. "Not bodies," Marcus said. "Something else. Something... I can't explain it." Within an hour, all 3 divers had confirmed the discovery. 15 feet below the surface, embedded in the lake bed, sat a massive metallic structure. It was circular, about 30 feet across, with strange patterns covering its surface. "It looks like a giant metal plate," Marcus explained to the growing crowd of officials, "with a round door or hatch in the center. And there are symbols all over it, like writing, but nothing I've ever seen before." By noon, news had spread throughout Lakeside Falls. Residents gathered at the lake's edge despite police attempts to establish a perimeter. "Could it be an old submarine?" someone suggested. "In a landlocked lake?" another responded. Sarah pushed through the crowd to confront Sheriff Peterson. "What does this mean? Where are they?" "I don't know," he admitted, "but we're going to find out." By evening, reporters from Minneapolis had arrived. Camera crews set up along the shore as Marcus Henderson showed underwater photographs of the structure to astonished officials. "The symbols seem to glow slightly," he explained, pointing to strange geometric patterns, "and they're arranged in sequences around the central hatch." "Has anyone tried to open it?" a reporter asked. Sheriff Peterson shook his head firmly. "Nobody touches anything until we get experts here." Those experts arrived sooner than expected. Before midnight, black SUVs with government plates pulled into the parking area. Men and women in official jackets emerged, showing credentials to local police. "I'm Special Agent Lisa Morgan, FBI," a tall woman announced, approaching Sheriff Peterson. "We're taking over this investigation." "On what grounds?" the sheriff demanded. "National security," she replied simply. By dawn the next day, Crystal Lake was transformed. Military vehicles lined the access roads. A large tent covered the area where the men had disappeared. Helicopters circled overhead, while scientists in specialized equipment were lowered through enlarged holes in the ice. Sarah watched from behind newly installed barriers as strangers took control of the search for her husband. "They know something," she said to Amy Collins, who stood beside her. "They came too quickly, with too much equipment. They knew what they would find." "But what is it?" Amy wondered aloud. "And what does it have to do with our men?" Inside the main operations tent, Sheriff Peterson argued with Agent Morgan. "These families deserve answers. This is my town, my responsibility." "I understand your frustration," Agent Morgan replied coolly, "but this is beyond local jurisdiction now. The structure appears to be technology of unknown origin." Unknown? What does that mean? The sheriff demanded. Before she could answer, a scientist rushed in, holding printouts of sonar readings. We've detected movement within the structure, he said urgently. Something's changing inside. Agent Morgan immediately ordered everyone except federal personnel to leave the ice. As Sheriff Peterson was escorted back to shore, he looked down through a nearby inspection hole. For just a moment, he thought he saw the symbols on the metal surface shift and rearrange themselves, glowing with an eerie blue light that reminded him of the empty coffee cups, still sitting where three friends had vanished without a trace. Within days, Crystal Lake transformed from a peaceful winter destination into a restricted military zone. Large green trucks rumbled down Main Street day and night. The sound of helicopters became as common as birdsong. Sarah Daniels stood at her kitchen window, watching another convoy pass. Her daughter Emma approached quietly. "Mom, when is Dad coming home?" Emma asked. Sarah wiped her eyes quickly. "I don't know, sweetie, but I'm going to find out." That afternoon, Sarah drove to the lake. A tall fence now surrounded the entire perimeter with signs reading, "Restricted Area, Authorized Personnel Only." A guard stopped her car. "Sorry, ma'am. No civilians allowed." "My husband is in there," Sarah said firmly. "Robert Daniels. He disappeared 5 days ago, and no one will tell me anything." "You need to speak with Agent Morgan," the guard replied. Inside a large white tent, Special Agent Lisa Morgan sat reviewing documents. She looked up when Sarah entered. "Mrs. Daniels," Agent Morgan said, "I understand your frustration, but I can't share details of an ongoing investigation." Sarah placed both hands on the desk. "3 men are missing. They have families. We deserve to know what you found." "The structure is unusual," Agent Morgan admitted. "We're still determining its origin and purpose." "Is it a submarine? A crashed plane?" Sarah pressed. "It's nothing that simple," Agent Morgan said. "That's all I can tell you." Across town, Jeffrey's 16-year-old son Tyler woke up screaming. His mother Amy rushed to his bedroom. "Tyler, what's wrong?" she asked, turning on the light. "Dad was trying to talk to me," Tyler said, trembling. "In my dream. He was in a dark place. He kept saying the same thing over and over." "What did he say?" Amy asked gently. "Time is different there," Tyler whispered, "and there were symbols everywhere." The next morning, Sheriff Peterson visited Eleanor Whitman, the town historian. Her small house was filled with books and old newspapers. "Tom, I found something you should see," Eleanor said, spreading yellowed newspaper clippings on her dining table. January 1952, 3 men vanished while ice fishing on Crystal Lake. Their equipment was found perfectly arranged, but they were never seen again. Sheriff Peterson leaned closer. "And?" "It happened again in 1986, Eleanor continued. "Another 3 men, same lake, same mysterious circumstances." The sheriff's face paled. "That's 33 years apart, and now again in 2018. "Exactly," Eleanor nodded. "Always in January. Always 3 men, always without explanation." That evening, Sheriff Peterson drove to the lake with Eleanor's research. He showed the papers to Agent Morgan. "This can't be coincidence," he insisted. Agent Morgan studied the clippings silently, then made a phone call. Within an hour, federal agents arrived at Eleanor's home. "They took everything," Eleanor told Sheriff Peterson later. "All my research, my computer, even my personal journals." Meanwhile, scientists in specialized suits continued studying the underwater structure. Dr. James Wilson, a physicist from NASA, emerged from the ice looking shaken. "The symbols changed again," he reported to Agent Morgan, "and we recorded energy pulses coming from the central chamber." "Any radiation?" she asked. "None we can detect," Dr. Wilson replied, "but our equipment keeps malfunctioning near the hatch." 3 weeks after the disappearance, without warning or explanation, the government began packing up. Large trucks removed equipment. Helicopters made final passes over the lake. Sarah confronted Agent Morgan as she prepared to leave. "You can't just go. What about our husbands?" "The investigation is being reassigned," Agent Morgan said, avoiding eye contact. "Crystal Lake will remain restricted indefinitely." "What did you find down there?" Sarah demanded. Agent Morgan hesitated. Mrs. Daniels, sometimes there are things we don't have the answers for. Not yet. The next day, permanent fencing surrounded Crystal Lake. Warning signs threatened prosecution for trespassing. A small security team remained, but the massive government presence vanished as quickly as it had arrived. In their absence, rumors spread through Lakeside Falls like wildfire. Without official information, the town created its own theories about what lay beneath the ice and what had happened to Bobby, Jeffrey, and Michael. 6 months passed since the government teams left Lakeside Falls. The snow had melted, summer arrived, and still, no one knew what happened to Bobby, Jeffrey, and Michael. One evening, a group of townspeople gathered at Murphy's bar to share theories. Frank Murphy wiped glasses behind the counter as the conversation grew louder. "It's obviously a government weapon," Frank said firmly, "something from the Cold War they don't want us to know about." Donna Martinez, the high school principal, shook her head. If it was a weapon, why would it take only 3 men? And why 33 years apart? "Maybe it's not from this world at all," suggested Bill Thompson, a local farmer. "Those symbols sound like alien writing." "Aliens? Really?" Frank laughed. "Next you'll say Bigfoot took them." Sarah Daniels sat quietly in the corner, listening. She had lost weight since Bobby disappeared, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. "Whatever it is," she finally said, "it took my husband, and Jeffrey and Michael. That's all I care about." The room fell silent. Across town, Reverend Williams held a prayer meeting at Lakeside Community Church. 20 people sat in the pews, heads bowed. "The Lord works in mysterious ways," the Reverend said. "The book of Job teaches us that sometimes we cannot understand God's plan." Eleanor Whitman, the town historian, had started a different kind of meeting in the library basement. She had slowly rebuilt her research after the FBI confiscated her original materials. "The 33-year cycle is the key," Eleanor told the small group. In ancient calendars, 33 was a sacred number representing transformation. Online, the mystery grew even larger. A website called Crystal Lake Truth had thousands of visitors from around the country. Some posted wild theories, others offered technical analysis of the underwater photographs that had leaked online. One Thursday morning in July, Sarah found a package on her front porch. No postmark, no return address. Inside was Bobby's wedding ring and a folded paper with numbers written on it. "Their coordinates," Sheriff Peterson said when Sarah showed him, "to a location in the Boundary Waters wilderness." "Who left this?" Sarah asked, her hands shaking. "I don't know," Sheriff Peterson admitted, "but we're going to find out." 2 days later, Sheriff Peterson led a small group including Sarah, Amy Collins, and 4 deputies into the remote wilderness. They hiked for 6 hours before reaching the exact spot marked by the coordinates. "There's nothing here," Amy said, looking around the clearing. "Wait," Sarah pointed. "Over there." A small pile of stones stood at the edge of the clearing. When they approached, they saw 3 hunting knives plunged into the ground at its center. Each knife belonged to one of the missing men. "Bobby's knife," Sarah whispered, touching the worn handle of one. "He's had it since he was 18. Sheriff Peterson examined the area carefully. No footprints, no signs anyone was here. "Someone is telling us something," Sarah said. "The men are alive, I'm sure of it now." Back in Lakeside Falls, the discovery sparked new theories. Some families packed up and moved away, unable to live with the mystery and fear. Others became more determined to solve it. Jeffrey's son Tyler started a social media group called Find Our Fathers that connected with people who had experienced similar unexplained disappearances across the country. "My dad's trying to reach us," Tyler told the group during an online meeting. "These aren't random events." As months passed, Lakeside Falls changed. Tourism dropped. Children weren't allowed near Crystal Lake. The no trespassing signs became covered with graffiti, questions, prayers, and theories about what lay beneath. "This town will never be the same," Sheriff Peterson told Sarah as they sat on her porch one evening. "Too many secrets now." Sarah looked toward the direction of the lake, though it was miles away and hidden by trees. "I received another dream last night," she said quietly. Bobby was trying to tell me something about time, that it works differently where they are. Sheriff Peterson didn't know what to say. He had been a practical man his whole life, but nothing about this case made practical sense. As the sun set, Sarah held Bobby's wedding ring tightly in her palm. "Whatever took them," she said, "is going to bring them back. I just need to figure out how." Sarah held Bobby's wedding ring tightly in her palm as the one-year anniversary of the disappearance approached. "Whatever took them is going to bring them back," she whispered to herself. The next morning, Sarah drove to the hardware store that she now managed with Emma's help. When she tried to unlock the door, her key wouldn't turn properly. She frowned and tried again. The lock clicked, then her phone suddenly died in her pocket. "That's strange," she muttered. "I just charged it." Inside, the lights flickered as she turned them on. The radio behind the counter switched stations by itself, buzzing with static between channels. Sheriff Peterson arrived an hour later, looking troubled. "Something weird is happening all over town," he said. "Compasses aren't working right. Cars won't start near the lake. 3 people called about seeing lights above the water last night." Sarah nodded. "Electronics are acting strange here too." That afternoon, Donna Martinez, the high school principal, came into the store carrying a large map of Lakeside Falls. "I've been marking where strange things happen," Donna explained, spreading the map on the counter. Red dots covered the areas surrounding Crystal Lake, forming an odd pattern. The closer to the lake, the more problems people report. "What kind of problems?" Sarah asked. "Headaches, strange dreams, pets behaving oddly. And this." Donna pointed to a cluster of dots near the elementary school. 3 different children from 3 different families had the exact same dream last night. Sheriff Peterson leaned forward. "What dream?" "They saw Bobby, Jeffrey, and Michael trapped in what they called a place with no color, where time doesn't work right," Donna said quietly. Sarah gasped. "Emma had that dream too. She told me this morning." As they spoke, Dr. Henry Wilson entered the store. "I need aspirin," he said. "Half the town seems to have headaches today. My waiting room is full." Sheriff Peterson rubbed his chin. "Do most of your patients live near the lake?" "Now that you mention it, yes," Dr. Wilson replied. "And they're all complaining about not sleeping well." That evening, Sarah found Emma sitting at the kitchen table, drawing strange symbols. "Honey, what are you drawing?" Sarah asked. Emma looked up, her eyes distant. "I saw these in my dream. Dad was trying to write them." The symbols matched those that had been photographed on the underwater structure. Later that night, Sheriff Peterson set up wildlife cameras around the lake perimeter. Though officially retired now, he couldn't let the case go. The government security team barely patrolled anymore, making it easier for him to investigate. 3 days later, he showed Sarah the footage. "Watch the water," he said, pointing to his laptop screen. On the video, the lake's surface moved in small waves, but they traveled against the wind direction. "That's impossible," Sarah whispered. "There's more," Sheriff Peterson said. "Look at this." The next clip showed a deer approaching the lake. The animal suddenly froze, then backed away rapidly, as if frightened by something invisible. "Animals won't go near the water anymore," he explained. "Birds circle the lake, but never land. Fish have disappeared from the northern section." As they watched the videos, the lights in Sarah's house dimmed, then brightened again. "It's getting worse," Sheriff Peterson said. The following Sunday, Reverend Williams held a special service about faith during uncertain times. Half the congregation believed the lake held something supernatural. The other half demanded scientific explanations. "Our town is being torn apart," the Reverend said sadly. That night, Sarah woke suddenly at exactly 3 o'clock in the morning. Bobby stood at the foot of her bed, but she could see through him. "Bobby," she whispered. "Time works differently here," he said, his voice sounding distant and strange. "We're trying to find a way back." Sarah reached out, but Bobby's image faded. She wasn't sure if it had been a dream or something more. The next morning, she found a message written in frost on her bathroom mirror. 33. When she called Sheriff Peterson, he arrived quickly. I think they're trying to communicate with us, Sarah said, showing him the message before it melted away. The question is, Sheriff Peterson replied, looking worried, what exactly is helping them do it? What exactly is helping them do it? Sheriff Peterson asked, looking worried at the message on Sarah's bathroom mirror. 2 years had passed since Bobby, Jeffrey, and Michael vanished from Crystal Lake. The strange phenomena continued to plague Lakeside Falls, electronic devices failing, compass needles spinning wildly, and mysterious lights appearing over the water at night. One morning, a van with university markings arrived in town. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a marine geologist from the University of Minnesota, stepped out and headed straight to the diner where Sarah was having breakfast. "Mrs. Daniels?" Dr. Martinez asked, approaching Sarah's table. "I'm Rebecca Martinez. I've been studying the data about what's under Crystal Lake." Sarah looked up cautiously. "The government took all the data." "Not all of it," Dr. Martinez said, sliding into the booth. "I've convinced them to let me conduct new research, as a scientist, not a government agent." Sheriff Peterson joined them, eyeing the newcomer suspiciously. "Why would they allow that after keeping everything secret?" "Because they're stumped," Dr. Martinez explained. "Whatever's down there doesn't match any known technology. They're hoping fresh eyes might see something they missed." 3 days later, Dr. Martinez's team set up equipment along the lakeshore. They used advanced sonar, magnetometers, and special cameras that could work underwater. "What are you finding?" Sarah asked, bringing coffee to the scientists. Dr. Martinez showed her a computer screen with colorful images. "The structure goes much deeper than anyone realized, hundreds of feet below the lake bed." "How is that possible?" Sheriff Peterson asked. "This lake was formed by glaciers. Nothing man-made could be that deep." "Exactly, Doctor," Martinez said quietly, "which means it's either been there for thousands of years, or what?" Sarah pressed. "Or it wasn't built from the surface down," Dr. Martinez finished. That evening, Dr. Martinez's team made another discovery. The geometric patterns on the structure had changed position since the original photographs were taken 2 years earlier. "They're moving?" Sarah asked, staring at side-by-side images. "Rearranging themselves," Dr. Martinez confirmed. "Slowly, but definitely changing." The next morning, the scientists detected something new. A low humming sound coming from the structure, creating tiny ripples in the water above. "It's vibrating at regular intervals," Dr. Martinez explained to Sarah and Sheriff Peterson, "like a heartbeat or a signal." Dr. Martinez decided to try taking a small sample from the structure. Her team lowered a special drill through the ice. When it touched the metal surface, all their equipment suddenly failed. Computers shut down, batteries drained instantly, and the drill motor burned out. "It's protecting itself," one scientist said, backing away from the hole in the ice. That night, Dr. Martinez had a vivid dream. In it, Michael Wright stood before a blackboard covered with complex equations. "The relationship between time and space isn't what we think," Dream Michael explained, writing numbers and symbols. "Where we are, the rules are different." When Dr. Martinez woke up, she found herself scribbling equations on her hotel notepad. Equations that described physics principles she'd never studied. "This is impossible," she whispered, staring at her own handwriting. The next day, Dr. Martinez tried to explain her findings to her team when 2 black SUVs pulled up. Men in dark suits approached her. "Dr. Martinez, your research authorization has been revoked," one man said flatly. "All your data and equipment are now property of the United States government." "You can't do this," Dr. Martinez protested as they began packing up her computers. "We're on the verge of understanding something important." "That's precisely why we're here," the man replied. Sheriff Peterson watched helplessly as the agents confiscated everything. When they finished, Dr. Martinez approached him and Sarah. "They can take my equipment," she whispered, "but not what I know." She slipped Sarah a small flash drive. "Everything I've learned is on this. The structure isn't just sitting there, it's active, and I think it's trying to communicate." As the government vehicles drove away, Dr. Martinez called out to Sarah, "The patterns aren't random. They're a language we don't understand yet. Your husband might still be trying to reach you. The structure isn't just sitting there, it's active, and I think it's trying to communicate, Dr. Martinez's words echoed in Sarah's mind as she clutched the flash drive containing the scientists' findings. 3 years had passed since the disappearance at Crystal Lake. Spring arrived in Lakeside Falls, bringing rain instead of snow, but no answers about Bobby, Jeffrey, and Michael. One evening, Amy Collins called Sarah in a panic. "Something's happening to Tyler," Amy sobbed over the phone. "He's talking like Jeffrey, using his voice, his expressions. It started last night." Sarah drove immediately to Amy's house. When she arrived, 16-year-old Tyler sat motionless on the couch, staring at nothing. "Tyler?" Sarah asked gently. The boy turned, but his eyes seemed different somehow. When he spoke, the voice was unmistakably Jeffrey's. "The chamber is dark," he said. "We can see them watching us, but they don't understand that we're here." Sarah gasped. "Jeffrey? Is that you?" "Bobby says to tell you the ring was a message," Tyler continued in Jeffrey's voice. "We're trying to find the way back." Sheriff Peterson arrived minutes later. He watched in astonishment as Tyler described a confined space with curved walls covered in symbols. "How long has this been happening?" the sheriff asked Amy. "It started 3 days ago," Amy explained, wiping tears. "He'll be normal, then suddenly start talking about being trapped. The doctors say it's trauma, that he's created this connection to cope with losing his father." Tyler suddenly stood up. "David and Lena are here too," he said, still in Jeffrey's voice. "Who are David and Lena?" Sarah asked. Tyler blinked, then spoke in his normal voice. "What happened? Why is everyone looking at me?" The next day, Dr. Henry Wilson examined Tyler at the local clinic. "Physically, he's fine," the doctor told Amy afterward. "But these episodes could be a psychological response to grief. I recommend therapy." Tyler shook his head. "I'm not making this up. Dad is trying to talk through me." That night, Sheriff Peterson researched the names David and Lena. He discovered that David Fletcher and Lena Morrison were 2 of the 3 people who vanished from Crystal Lake in 1986. "It can't be coincidence," the sheriff told Sarah over coffee the next morning. Tyler mentioned names he couldn't possibly know. Over the following weeks, Tyler's episodes became more frequent. He began drawing complex diagrams of circular rooms and passageways, depicting what he said was the interior of the structure beneath Crystal Lake. "Dad says they're trapped between places," Tyler explained while sketching. "Time moves differently where they are. What feels like days to them has been years for us." One evening during an episode, Tyler grabbed a marker and covered his bedroom wall with symbols identical to those on the underwater structure. When Sheriff Peterson photographed the symbols and compared them to Dr. Martinez's data on the flash drive, they matched perfectly. "This is impossible," the sheriff whispered. "These were never made public." 3 days later, a black SUV pulled up outside Amy's house. A man in a suit knocked on the door. "I'm Dr. Reynolds," he said, showing identification from a government department with a name too long to remember. "We'd like to speak with your son about his recent experiences." "How did you know about that?" Amy demanded. "We monitor situations related to the Crystal Lake incident," Dr. Reynolds replied smoothly. "May we come in?" Amy blocked the doorway. "Number Tyler isn't talking to anyone without me present." As government interest in Tyler increased, Sarah and Sheriff Peterson helped Amy protect him. They moved Tyler to a cabin outside town owned by Michael's former student, now a park ranger. There, Tyler worked with several of Michael's former science students to document everything he experienced during episodes. They created a detailed map of what Tyler believed was the interior of the structure. "There's a central chamber," Tyler explained, pointing to his drawing. "That's where Dad, Bobby, and Michael are trapped. They can see us sometimes, like looking through a window that only opens occasionally." Dr. Reynolds and other government agents continued searching for Tyler, but the small group kept him hidden while seeking answers. "We need to understand what's happening," Sarah told the group gathered at the cabin. "If Tyler really is communicating with our men, he might be our only chance to bring them home." Sheriff Peterson placed the old photograph of Bobby, Jeffrey, and Michael on the memorial table. 5 years had passed since the 3 men vanished from Crystal Lake. The small wooden memorial stood at the lake's edge, covered with flowers, notes, and mementos left by townspeople. "Hard to believe it's been 5 years," he said, adjusting his civilian coat. Since retirement, he visited this spot every week. Sarah Daniels stood beside him, her children Emma, now 18, and Jack, 15, placing fresh flowers on the memorial. "Bobby would be proud of how you've kept the hardware store going," Sheriff Peterson told Sarah. "Some days I still expect him to walk through the door," Sarah replied, watching Emma arrange the flowers carefully. Back in town, the hardware store had become a gathering place for those who still sought answers. Sarah had hung a map on the wall marked with every strange occurrence around Crystal Lake. "Mom, there's someone here to see you," Emma called from the front counter later that afternoon. Sarah looked up to see Dr. Rebecca Martinez standing in the doorway. Despite government warnings to stay away from Lakeside Falls, the scientist had returned. "I couldn't stay away, Doctor," Martinez explained. "My university fired me for continuing this research, but I had to come back." "Why now?" Sarah asked. "Because satellite images are showing something new, Doctor," Martinez said, opening her laptop. "Thermal patterns beneath the lake are changing. There's movement down there." The thermal images showed pulsing colors beneath the ice, concentrated around the structure. "It's more active than ever before, Doctor," Martinez explained, "almost like it's building energy." That evening, Tyler Collins arrived at the store. Now 21, he had become a physics student at the University of Minnesota, following in Michael's scientific footsteps. "The episodes are getting stronger," Tyler told them. "Last night my dad spoke through me for almost an hour. He said they're finding weak points between wherever they are and our world." Sheriff Peterson spread out a map of the lake. "We need to document everything strange that happens, no matter how small." The next morning, after the first snowfall of winter, Sheriff Peterson made his regular visit to the lake. He stopped suddenly, staring at the fresh snow covering the frozen surface. 3 sets of footprints led from the center of the lake toward the shore before vanishing completely. Sheriff Peterson took photographs, then measured the boot prints. They matched exactly the sizes worn by Bobby, Jeffrey, and Michael. When he showed the photos to Sarah, she dropped into a chair. "It's them," she whispered. "They're trying to come back." Dr. Martinez analyzed the footprint photos. The impressions are strange, lighter than they should be, as if the men weren't fully present. That night, residents around Crystal Lake reported seeing 3 shadowy figures walking across the ice, glowing faintly in the darkness. "It's happening more frequently," Tyler said during a meeting at Sarah's house. "The barrier between wherever they are and here is getting thinner." Dr. Martinez nodded. "My calculations show energy spikes every 33 days, and the biggest spike should happen on January 12th, exactly 5 years from when they disappeared." "We need a plan," Sarah said firmly. "If there's a chance they're coming back, we need to be ready." Over the next weeks, Sarah, Tyler, Sheriff Peterson, and Dr. Martinez prepared. They gathered equipment, cameras, lights, communications devices, anything that might help if the men returned. The local authorities had grown more lenient about access to the lake over the years. The government security team had been reduced to a single part-time guard who rarely patrolled the area. "What if they need help getting through?" Sarah asked during their final planning session. "Tyler might be the key," Dr. Martinez suggested. "His connection to Jeffrey has been growing stronger. He might be able to guide them." As January 12th approached, the town watched Crystal Lake with a mixture of hope and fear. Strange lights appeared more frequently above the water. Electrical disturbances increased. More footprints appeared and vanished in fresh snow. On January 11th, Tyler had the strongest episode yet. "Tomorrow," he said in Jeffrey's voice. "Dawn, where we disappeared, we found the way back, but we can only hold it open briefly. Be there." Sarah looked at the others. "After 5 years, they're coming home." Dawn broke over Crystal Lake on January 12th, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. 5 years to the day since Bobby, Jeffrey, and Michael had vanished without a trace. The temperature hovered around 20 degrees as Sarah Daniels pulled on her heavy winter coat. "Mom, are you sure about this?" Emma asked, handing her mother a thermos of coffee. "I've never been more sure of anything," Sarah replied. "Your father is coming home today." Sheriff Peterson's truck pulled into the driveway. Dr. Martinez sat in the passenger seat while Tyler Collins waited in the back. Amy Collins followed in her own car, her face tight with worry. "Everyone ready?" Sheriff Peterson asked as Sarah climbed in. "We've been ready for 5 years," Sarah said. They drove in silence to Crystal Lake. The security guard was nowhere to be seen. Sheriff Peterson had called in a fake disturbance on the other side of town to ensure they wouldn't be interrupted. The group walked carefully onto the ice, following the path that Bobby, Jeffrey, and Michael had taken 5 years earlier. They carried flashlights, cameras, and extra clothing for the missing men. "This is the spot," Sheriff Peterson said when they reached the center of the lake. Tyler suddenly gasped and dropped to his knees. "Tyler!" Amy cried, rushing to her son. "It's starting," Tyler said, his voice changing to Jeffrey's. "The doorway is opening. Position yourselves in a circle around me." The group formed a circle, with Tyler in the center. Dr. Martinez set up measuring equipment that immediately began registering unusual readings. "The electromagnetic field is spiking," she announced, watching her devices. "Something's happening beneath us." The ice beneath their feet began to vibrate. A low humming sound filled the air. The sunrise light seemed to bend and shimmer around them. "Bobby?" Sarah called out. "Can you hear us?" Tyler stood up, his eyes unfocused. "We can see you," he said in Jeffrey's voice. "The gateway is almost aligned." Sheriff Peterson's compass spun wildly in his hand. The temperature dropped suddenly, their breath forming thick clouds in the air. "Look!" Amy pointed to the ice. 3 shadowy figures appeared below the surface, as if they were walking upward through the ice itself. The outlines became clearer. 3 men in faded orange hunting vests. "It's them," Sarah whispered. Dr. Martinez's equipment began to spark and smoke. "The energy readings are off the charts." A bright blue light flashed beneath the ice, illuminating the strange symbols that covered the structure below. The humming grew louder. "They're coming through," Tyler said, his voice now his own again. "Dad, we're here." 3 distinct shapes rose through the solid ice as if it were merely water, gradually taking form. First came hands, then heads and shoulders, finally full bodies emerging onto the surface. Bobby Daniels stood before them, looking exactly as he had 5 years ago. Behind him were Jeffrey and Michael. Their orange vests were faded, their faces tired but alive. "Sarah," Bobby said, his voice sounding distant and strange. Sarah ran forward, arms outstretched, but stopped short when her hands passed through him. "We're not fully back yet," Bobby explained. "The transition takes time." "What happened to you?" Sheriff Peterson asked. "Where have you been?" "Time works differently there," Michael explained. "For us, it's been only a few weeks." "The structure is a gateway," Jeffrey added. "It opens every 33 years. We've found others inside who had fallen through before. David, Lena, all of them." "How do we bring you back completely?" Dr. Martinez asked. Bobby pointed to the center of the lake. "The doorway is still open, but it's closing. We need to anchor ourselves to this side." "How?" Sarah asked desperately. "The connection has to be something strong enough to pull us through completely," Bobby explained. "Something that binds us to this world." Tyler stepped forward. "Like family, like love." "Yes," Jeffrey said, looking at his son with pride. Sarah reached for Bobby's hand again. This time she felt something, not solid, but a tingling sensation. "It's working," Bobby whispered. "Keep holding on." The blue light pulsed beneath them, growing brighter. The 3 men began to look more solid with each pulse. "Don't let go," Michael urged. "The doorway is closing." The humming reached a painful pitch. The ice beneath them glowed with blinding light. "Now!" Bobby shouted.